All right, we got ourselves a patch coming out for Total War Warhammer 2 that addresses a lot of the issues that were brought up with Silence and the Fury, namely, of course, the cavalry issues that were highlighted in Indie Pride's video showing how infantry can just completely wreck cavalry in a lot of instances. So in this video today, we're going to be going through those patch notes. I'm going to hit you up front with some Spark notes, kind of like a summary of what we're going to be talking about to decide if you even want to stick around. Real quick though, huge shout out to Creative Assembly. They've sent this to all the content creators ahead of time. As you can see, this says September 2nd, but this patch is not out until later. So, and I'm recording this on like the 7th or 6th or whatever the hell day it is. But my point here is that this patch kind of shores up a lot of the issues brought with Silence and the Fury. So mainly this is going to be focused towards Beastmen and Lizardmen changes. Tarrox can no longer go on an unlimited rampage. His rampage is limited to 50 gained in one battle, no longer 150. So he can't exploit that bug where he just goes on an unlimited rampage across the map. Also, Lizardmen have had some stuff fixed with Nakai, because he brought some new units to the table, so they'll actually be upgraded properly using all the AI's buildings as needed. Also, when it comes to Oxyodal's missions, there will be more hard and normal missions spawning rather than just a slew of easy missions. Also, there was a tweak to the chariot issue that was happening with all of the Beastman chariots just doing inordinate amounts of damage. That's been toned back, as well as the Vanguard deployment being issued to them as promised with Kazrak One-Eye. So that's all of the patch note changes, because it's really the big ones. But the big portion of this is the cavalry beta that is being added to fix and change how that works. And again, that there's a huge portion of these notes I'm going to quickly tell you about. But basically how it's going to work is the bracing is going to have more of an impact against charges from cavalry, and countercharging cav is now going to be more detrimental for your infantry, and cavalry as a whole will be able to pull out of infantry engagements easier depending upon how this beta actually shakes out. So essentially you'll have heavy cav acting in the way that it was meant to act. A strong shock cav force that jumps in, hits the enemy hard, and can pull back out and do this again and again. And in the current state of the game, that is either mitigated by return charges completely killing the cav, or by the unit compositions preventing the cav from pulling out of the unit. So those are the quick little summary Spark notes of the entire patch notes. If that's all you wanted to know, you are cleared weapons hot to go ahead and shut the video down here today. But before you do, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. And if you have not picked up Silence and the Fury, or any Total War game for that matter, you can do so using the link to my Nexus Store in the description and pinned comment. Up until September 8th, I believe it is, we're getting full 100% margin from Nexus, so it can't tell you how much it helps support the channel. Let's dive into the patch notes for those that want to stick around for the nitty and gritty. And like I said here, there's not a whole ton to really jump into, mainly fixing a lot of bugs that occurred with Silence and the Fury and kind of tweaking things about. So we'll go through these real quick, but fix an issue with collision models on chariots, which were causing them to be overpowered. You probably saw this showcased in a number of videos. I know Turin showed it off, another of other gentlemen, so you can see that on their respective YouTube channels. Area of effect spells no longer affect units outside of their effect range, which is also always awesome. Fix an issue where entities moving into a wizard casting a magic missile spell can cause the character to cast it again. When a mod gives foreign slots to a faction that does not have them, the game no longer crashes on load. So you're experiencing a lot of crashes from some of your mods. That has hopefully now been fixed. And as you can see here, I would normally highlight this, but if you can see, I've got a little magnifying glass. This is one big picture, so I can't highlight it as I normally do. So if it's hard to follow suit, I apologize. Normally I highlight things and have things highlighted in different colors to kind of illustrate nerfs and buffs, so on and so forth. But for the Beastmen here, for Kazrak and Morgur, can no longer re-emerge after their death. Fixed a bug where Kazrak couldn't use his abilities when mounted on a Tuskgore chariot, and Kazrak now gives Razorgore chariots Vanguard deployment. For Tarrox, the Juggernaut raiding stance no longer takes away the movement range increase from raising a settlement, which I can't tell you how great that is, because you'd raise a settlement, switch to Juggernaut, and then you'd lose that bonus movement range. It would always piss me off. So that's a nice little change and fix there. A maximum 50 rampage can be earned through a single battle now, regardless of how many are fought. This prevents an infinite rampage bug where 150 rampage can be gained in a single battle, thus being able to reset your movement speed and just kind of rampage around the map infinitely. That has been fixed. In the Mortal Empires campaign, the objective to either raise or control settlements now ticks off correctly. General, fix an issue when Cadden Unleashed would not unlock when requirement conditions were met. That's the one in the actual research tree. They're saying that has been fixed. Defiled blood ground regions don't move to a new blood ground in case of overlap when establishing a new blood ground. Previously, if you established two and they overlapped, sometime that defiled would move around. Not the case anymore. Fix an issue in Beastman co-op campaigns where a partner upgrading their starting Hearthstone would prevent the user from upgrading theirs. Again, been fixed. Tuskor Chariot mounted heroes now count towards the hero cap. And for Lizardman, Oxyodal, his Sanctum defense missions now display the correct amount. Increased frequency of medium and hard vision spawnings. Again, like I was saying earlier, you were getting a slew of easy and very rarely medium and hard. That's been tweaked around now. Final quest battle will no longer expire. For Nakai, all appropriate horde buildings within Nakai's faction now correctly affect new units and increase Skink Oracle capacity. For General, made improvements to Codal melee animations, which is always a good improvement. Fixed a bug where the Skink Oracle on Troglodon was firing a double volley of the Troglodon's Venom Spit whilst on the move. That has been toned down. Temple of the Old Ones ritual now increases Skink Oracle capacity. For Greenskins, fix an issue in Grom's final battle. The player would be unable to control their units. And then for Vampire Counts, remove duplicate White King button from the hero recruitment UI. And Kevin von Lloydstein now correctly equips either Skeletal Steed mount when purchased via his skill tree. So this is coming out immediately with the patch. Now, with that patch, we're also getting a beta patch to kind of test a lot of the changes with the Cavalry. And the way that this works, essentially, I'm going to kind of paraphrase a lot of this for you. If you have not seen the videos showcasing what's going on, basically, if you were to take a unit of Dragon Princes and charge into a unit of, I think Indie Pride used Great Swords in the video. I can't remember off the top of my head. The Dragon Princes would lose like 50% health and the Great Swords would lose like 20%, maybe. Like any mismatched infantry to cav charge would just result in cavalry just getting completely minced. And that caused obviously a lot of issues because shock cav was not working as intended. And what they've decided to do here is change a lot of the calculations in the way things work. Some of the big things here are these two big bullet points. Entities will no longer charge attack if their charge path is blocked by a friendly entity. This particularly affects infantry versus cavalry counter-charge interactions. Now, what that means is, let's say you've got 4 lines of infantry. You know, let's just say four rows, if you think of it that way. 4 rows of 10, 40 infantry units. Well, if they're all counter-charging, the back 2 rows won't get their charge bonus. So it's meant to mitigate the amount of units connecting with the smaller entity unit of the cav. What was happening was the infantry, all of the models in the infantry unit would get their hit onto the cav, and the cav would just get decimated by it. So the way that this works now is that it's condensed it so the units that actually hit the cav are going to get that charge bonus versus the units behind are not. So it helps mitigate a lot of that damage by making it more realistic. At the same time, though, I do wonder how that's going to shake out in infantry as a whole, right? For infantry versus infantry engagements, will this make it that charge bonus is going to be completely mitigated, or however that works? It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in the beta. Now, the second bullet point here is the calculation for collision damage has been changed. So collision damage is basically whenever a larger entity smashes into a smaller entity. That causes collision damage. It's defined right here. The amount of damage dealt when a large entity collides with a small entity, just like I said. And then you've got collision power. This represents momentum by that large into that small, relative delta speeds, and so on and so forth. So they've changed those things around so that that collision damage increases or decreases depending on the certain scenario. So now collision damage is just a calculation using collision power, remember that's momentum, and not adding the flat charge bonus. This essentially means charging into braced infantry will result in much lower damage on impact than unbraced infantry. Because the problem here too, aside from Cav getting minced in infantry, it didn't matter if the infantry was braced or not. It was the actual damage was negligible, essentially. So this aims to fix both of these issues. Cav getting completely destroyed and infantry not really benefiting from being braced like they should have. So these two changes reinforce our intentions of how Cav and infantry should interact. Cav should be favored in fights against countercharging infantry. Of course, the relative strengths of the units will still be important. Braced infantry should receive less damage than countercharging infantry, so there is a benefit to bracing infantry against Cav. So that's the big focus here. And then here's the actual patch notes for it. This is pretty much them explaining what's gonna happen, how the beta is gonna shake out. Here's how they define their terms that they use internally, the nomenclature as it were, and here are the actual changes. So one of the other big changes is knockdown, what they call knockdown getting up delay. The game has a random delay for how long entities will stay on the ground before getting up following a knockdown. And one of the other big reasons that you might struggle using cavalry in a cycle charging scenario is because of the fact that infantry gets up so quickly that it pins Cav in place. The knockdown getting up random delays have been increased as cavalry would often not have window to disengage cleanly, as infantry would get up inside the cavalry unit and disrupt disengaging when cycle charging. The delay has been changed from 0.7 to 2 seconds to 1.1 to 2.7 seconds. So a nice substantial increase here to really make it so that you can cycle in and out of units to do a lot of damage. Now, when it comes to bracing itself, it's been changed a little bit. Braced units now get their max bracing bonus at 8 ranks deep, was 6 previously. So again, that's 8 ranks of units. You'll get better bracing capability. Of course, you then have to determine if you're willing to have a smaller unit that can get wrapped up by another infantry unit. So you're going to have to kind of play with that. Max bracing multiplier for mass from ranks was changed from 3.5 to 4. So you get a bonus depending upon your ranks. And then charge defenders have had their bracing multiplier increased from 1.75 to 2. So it's nice to see that you get more and more benefits for bracing, and it makes bracing more important, right? It makes it actually useful. And we're going to be seeing that used in Total War Warhammer 3 because we actually can get a visual icon if a unit's braced or not. So bracing as a whole, I think in the future is going to be a much more accessible mechanic, and one that people can visually see and use a little bit better. I think that thinking of how to brace things and keep things braced can be a little tedious, especially if you're playing multiplayer. So this kind of gives you a lot of contextual benefits to it, so on and so forth. But these are the patch notes here for patch 1.12.1 and the new beta for the Cav. So if you have any questions here, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Let me know if you're going to jump into that beta and test out how this kind of shakes out with the cavalry. Were you playing your games and noticing that all of your Cav troops are just getting annihilated by infantry, or were you just not even touching Cav and this is not really going to affect you? Go ahead and let it be known in the comment section below as always. But thank you so much for watching here today. Guys, have a good one and take care.